very touched by that. And that was not the only case that we saw at that time down there. And later on, when I was traveling in that part of Africa, I met a lot of young, strong boys and girls who had very good plans for their future down there. Not long ago, maybe 2 years or 3 years ago, I was in United States. And I met at least 30 young persons from that part of Africa. They were very frightened. They were shaking. You look in their eyes, you know that they don't know what they was trying to get there. They had to come. I asked them, they said they passed by Nicaragua, cross a very dangerous part of Latin America, and then come to illegally in the United States. And that day when I went to start my concert, I asked to people not to look at them like bandits. I said to them, if you go in Africa in certain time, these young people, they can welcome you very much. They're very proud, they're very noble people. But at the end of the day, like Ibrahima said, nothing was there for them to do agriculture, fishing, or farming. And the parents sometimes, they come and say to them, why are you standing here? Why don't you go? Because all your friends in the village, they sell their lands. Some people sell their cows or their sheep and goats. They take the money and they go to Spain and take the plane and go to Nicaragua and to arrive in the United States. If you are encouraged to do that because of land degradation, because of desertification, what can you do? You are not very well educated. You can't make any difference or what you're going to find down there or what you leave behind. So it's really dangerous for these people. I was very touched and I asked to people and said to them, please, these people, they don't come here because they are very poor. It's because of the situation that land degradation and climate change and desertification bring to their life. So please help them, because when you help any one of them, you help a whole family or you help a village. And please encourage them to get education and to be ready to go back, because Africa needs them. We need this generation. We have many big plans to develop ourselves, but without this generation, we can't make it happen. So I'm here today to say, every one of you, please, if you can't support these young people outside of Africa, or come to Africa to support some project of agriculture or development, you will make a change. Thank you very much.
شكرا بابا مال سفير النوايا الحسنة على الكلمة.
Thank you, Baba Mal, Goodwill Ambassador, for your statement. It is now my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Adrian Ford, Minister of Environment, Green and Blue Economy of Barbados, and His Excellency Hugo Moran Fernandez, Secretary of State for Environment in Spain. I will now hand over the conduct of the meeting to the co-chairs, and I wish you a most productive deliberation.
Muchas gracias, Presidente.
Thank you very much, President of the COP, Excellencies, delegations, representatives. May I thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Secretariat of the UNCCD for having organized this event. It's an honor for me to moderate this dialogue with Adrian Ford, Minister of the Environment and the Green and Blue Economy of Barbados. Land degradation and drought are the outcome of a huge number of factors interrelated there, which lead to the loss of productivity of land, the reduction of resilience in the face of extreme weather events, and gives rise to water and food insecurity, and it also forces rural communities to migrate in search of better living conditions. In the face of this global challenge, we absolutely must strengthen regional and international cooperation to mitigate the factors that cause migration and forced displacement. Such cooperation should happen coordinatedly and to find synergies between both countries and international organizations and other stakeholders in this context. Many things can be done to sustainable management of land, agroeconomy, sound management policies, and land tenure policies. Only together we'll be able to guarantee a sustainable and safe future for all, which is why this ministerial dialogue is so relevant for us. May I explain to you now how we will be working this afternoon? First of all, there will be two presentations. Two speakers will address you, after which there will be the ministerial dialogue, which will last around 2 hours. During the ministerial dialogue, the ministers and other high-level representatives who wish to do so can take the floor. So I would invite participants who wish to take the floor to ask for the floor by pressing the button on your microphone. I would also ask participants to limit their statements to a maximum of 3 minutes so that the greatest number of countries can take the floor. I would like to remind, and we will remind you of when you've overstepped your time limit. This being said, it's a pleasure to give the first, to Mr. Carlos Alvaro Quesada, former President of Costa Rica, the floor. Sir, you have the floor.
Voy a dar la palabra a continuación.
I am now going to give the floor. Yes, it is the aforementioned speaker.
Very much. Thank you to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for hosting us in such a generous way. Thank you to the Secretariat, to you, Ibrahim, to your team for raising the ambition and making land a topic for us. And thank you all for being here in this relevant dialogue. So let me please invite you to an exercise. And I really want for us to try to make this together. I'm going to offer some questions, and I'd invite you to try to answer those questions in your own mind for a second. So please play along with me in this exercise. Are we separated from the land as human beings? Or are we one with the land? What's your answer to that question? Another question. Is migration good or is migration bad? What's your answer to that question? Third question. Are those questions I just offered the right framing of the problem? Or are the problems more complex than I just framed as something being good or bad? Or are we separated or not from the land? And it can appear as a game, but I do believe concepts matter. And the way we frame problems and the way we answer determines the response we give to situations as human beings. I am convinced we live in a time of very complex problems. We're talking about climate change. We're talking about land degradation. We're talking about desertification. We're talking about accelerating loss of biodiversity. We're talking about energy transition. We're talking about the threat on the food for the decades to come. Here in this scenario, the expert of the Potsdam Climate Institute said we are on a trajectory at the end of the century to increase global temperature by 3 degrees. Again, we live in an era of complexity. Concepts matter, and how we frame solutions matter. We live in an era of complexity, yet the narratives we use to solve problems tend to be simplified, simplifications of reality. Is that the best way we can approach to solve those problems? We live in an era of complex problems, simple narratives. And I've seen so many political debates recently around the world, many of them centered on migration, and very few, I believe none, centered on land or land degradation. Why is that? Migration on one part might seem to be a phenomenon. Is migration at the root of the phenomenon? Sometimes it appears that land is at the root of the phenomenon, and yet we don't discuss about land. The environmental crisis we're facing, it's a triple crisis between the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, and the land crisis. We're not only going to experience people migration due to sea level rise, due to extreme weathers, due to drought, due to desertification, due to many phenomena. We'll also be going to experiencing ecosystem migration because of the shifts of temperature. So ecosystems that used to be in certain geographies are going to migrate to. That's the level of complexity we're talking about. 30% of the world's food systems are at risk in decades to come. More than 200 million people is estimated to migrate in the next decades due to one or other phenomena related to environmental change, climate change, desertification. Concepts matter. How we frame this and how we come to solutions matter. And humbly, I don't come here to argue that I have solutions to that. Actually, I believe that's why it's relevant for us to come here and discuss the nexus between land degradation, and migration. What I can offer are perhaps certain views, tips, if you want, of what I have found in the past years to be useful mindsets to address, to communicate, and to work with others, to find solutions. And I'll give 4 mindsets that I want to offer and share humbly today. One is embrace the nexus between land degradation, desertification, and migration with an open mind, with a fresh mind. Whenever we engage in these topics, we engage with stereotype often. We engage very often with prejudice. We require to engage these topics with an open, fresh mind. Because sometimes those stereotypes are misleading. They actually lead us to false solutions, to faulty debates, and not to help the people we serve. An open mind, a fresh mind. Second, to put the people, all the people, on the center of the debate. Because this is not a unidimensional debate. Sometimes the discussion about land, it's a discussion to enforce the right to stay. Because people want to stay where home is, but their land is disappearing. So something that we call adaptation, it's also the right to stay, or it's the right to work on the means to keep livelihoods for generations in what they call home. Sometimes it's the right to adapt. Because if temperatures keep the direction they are having, there are going to be places in which life is not going to be bearable. It's going to be literally impossible to stay. So there's a right for people to adapt in this case. So solutions are going to vary, also because the will of the people vary. But we have to keep an open mind into which is the best solution. Every adaptation is local. Every successful adaptation is the one that gives agency to the local community, not the one that strips and enforces a solution top-bottom. So then put the people at the center of the debate. Third, we need to get the finance right. Whatever the decision of adaptation and the will and the agency of the people is, it requires the appropriate funding, either to improve the quality of the land, either to do a relocation with dignity, either to move, to contribute elsewhere. Because also societies are going to be needing, for example, labor force, organized migration too. And that could be a win-win scenario. It's actually happening. But for that we need to get the finance right. And a finance that is not rooted in the local, it's not a finance that's going to have the freedom and the agency to develop the solutions that are required. We need to unlock that finance, but also the means to make it effective. An open mind, putting the people on the center, get the finance right. And my final suggestion, advice, offering will be to embrace this with a lot of empathy, human empathy. Because we talk about land, we talk about energy transition, we talk about migration. At the end of the day, it's not the energy that is transitioning, it's not the land systems or the food system that are transitioning, it's not only migration that's happening. Who is transitioning is us, the human beings. As a joint family, it's on us. Are we one family or not? That's another question to put into those questions of concepts. I do believe to get the right answers to all these dilemmas, we need to embrace them with empathy, so we can advance, so we can recover, restore land, so we can thrive, so people can either enforce the right to stay or move with dignity. There's no one solution fits all, but there has to be dignity for all in this transition we are all experiencing as a common family in this planet. That's humbly what I can offer for this dialogue, and I wish it to be very productive. Thank you very much.
Agradecemos la intervención de Carlos Alvarado.
I would like to thank Carlos Quezada for the intervention, and now I will give the floor to the Joint Director General of the
Excellencies, distinguished speakers, colleagues and friends. It's such an honor for me to have the opportunity to speak to you today about the impact of land degradation, desertification and drought on migration, security and prosperity. We face painful realities. Every year, tens of thousands are displaced, forced to abandon their land and livelihoods due to land degradation and drought. Last year, nearly 500,000 people were displaced by these factors, with half in Africa and the Middle East, regions which are already struggling with poverty and conflict. And we've already heard the Executive Secretary himself speak in much greater detail about this current reality. During droughts, short-term migration to nearby areas is a key survival strategy for farmers. But how can we transform this into a transformational adaptation strategy? The solutions are within our grasp, and it's such an honor for me to follow the previous speaker, because now I am going to speak about solutions. The global experience shows that land management, when coupled with early warning and drought resilience, it's not only a necessity, it's a game changer. Because yes, indeed, as Carlos asked us, we are, of course, inextricably linked with our land, and land degradation is at the root cause of many times why people choose to leave or have no other option but to leave. In Chad's arid regions, I met Amina, a former nomadic herder. And due to droughts and barren land, she and her family had to migrate in search of water and pasture. IOM, local partners, and a regional herder organization support her family and community in managing transhumance mobility and using sustainable farming techniques. This initiative aims to enhance food security, reduce cross-border conflict, and generate alerts on herder movement and potential tensions combined with land management strategies. This story exemplifies the power of community action, and President Carlos had spoken about what needs to happen at the local level. This is at the heart of what we must strive for: sustainable, proactive strategies that offer people choices, dignity, and stability. At the core of this vision lies the power of regional cooperation and partnerships. So, for example, the IGAD protocol on transhumance ensures that herders can move safely in search of water and pasture, protecting their livelihoods and preventing resource-related conflict. Another example is the Kampala Declaration on Migration, Environment, and Climate Change, and the Baku Call on Climate Action for Peace, Relief, and Recovery at COP29. These create a powerful framework to bridge the gap between migration, environmental change, and peace. So we recognize that irregular migration is a challenge, but that regular migration is a great opportunity, because we see the significant contribution of migrants through remittances, which play a key role in mobilizing resources for large-scale investments to address desertification, land degradation, and drought. So according to IOM's World Migration Report, remittance flows have dramatically increased to $831 billion in 2022. And for developing countries, we know that these remittances are significant and more than 3 times ODA and FDI combined. Remittances have the potential to significantly boost household income, helping lift families out of poverty, and therefore increasing resilience in communities affected by desertification, land degradation, and drought. Beyond the economic capital of migrants, it's also about their contribution through their knowledge, network, and skills to build stronger and more resilient communities. So now let's go to Iraq, in the Kurdistan region, where Farzan Najmuddin, who's a member of the diaspora in the Netherlands, launched a pilot project to improve agriculture in the face of water scarcity and drought. By leveraging diaspora knowledge and skills transfer, new partnerships and initiatives, These were formed across borders. This is an individual story, but it's an example of how solutions we know work, reach the most vulnerable, and are impactful at the local level. These we must take to scale. Furthermore, the industries which are impacted the most, such as agriculture, are among those with the highest concentration of migrant workers. Connecting these workers with green skills and knowledge is essential. And we know that the demand for green skills is already much higher than the availability. And land degradation, addressing land degradation, is not going to happen without building these green skills and knowledge. And governments can support this transition by creating labor migration pathways that build resilience to desertification and drought while protecting the rights of their migrants. So UNCCD has led efforts to integrate migration into environmental policies, with COP decisions encouraging positive measures to address drivers of irregular migration. As negotiations continue, let's remember that regular migration can be part of the solution. By prioritizing early warning systems, conflict-sensitive land management, and inclusive governance, we can reduce drivers of irregular migration and align with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, particularly Goal 15 on life to land and Goal 16 on peace and justice. So let's commit to regional cooperation, strengthen partnerships, and create sustainable solutions to address the root causes of irregular migration and conflict, to restore our lands, to manage our water, and to support communities that are most vulnerable. Because we know, and I say this from IOM, because we're in communities in 170 countries around the world, we know that when we speak to community members, they want to stay. They want the capacity, the skills, and the opportunity that will give them solutions to stay. And we must support these, whether it's with the finance, whether it's with the skills, whether it's with the innovation and the knowledge. And this way, together, we can, we will, and we must have lasting impact. I thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam Ugochi Daniels, for this contribution. And next, we will begin the ministerial dialogue. So from this moment on, you can ask for the floor by pushing the button that you have on your microphones. And let me recall once again that I would ask you please to limit your statements to 3 minutes so that we can have the largest number of participants taking part. And to cover all of the requests, we will be rigorous about keeping the time. Now, I would first give the floor to Jordan, to be followed by Kazakhstan. Jordan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, when speaking about land degradation, we need to link them to refugee crisis and their negative impacts. Land degradation is a reason of forced migration because of lack of livelihoods. Refugee crisis and migration are one of the most important causes that lead to depletion of natural resources of host countries due to the increase of the population. Land degradation is not a new challenge facing the world. It is an accelerated phenomenon. International statistics show that 40% of the land are deteriorated, and 100 million of hectares of productive land are subject to degradation. In the past decades, Jordan has faced many migration flows, which led to an increase of pressure and demand on water resources, natural resources, and land. 1 out of 3 persons living in Jordan is a refugee. and this increases the pressure on our infrastructure and our natural resources. And this also leads to an increasing demand on the limited resources and services, including water, health, and education. His Majesty King Abdullah bin Hussein, may God bless him, has launched the Climate Refugee Nexus initiative during the Climate Summit COP27. This initiative aims at giving the priority in terms of technical and financial support to the countries that are in so-called climate hotspots and facing an unnatural increase in their population because of migration crisis. We are grateful to 59 countries that supported this initiative so far, and we invite other countries to join this initiative. This initiative was also part of the declaration of COP27. Our government in the previous years has implemented many development projects aiming at land restoration, ending the degradation in all the areas of the Kingdom of Jordan in order to limit the impact of internal migration. And we worked on the restoration of the lands that were impacted by migration. Finally, it is important to provide international support and finance to strategic projects, namely projects in the areas that are the most vulnerable to land degradation and climate change, and the areas that are facing demographic pressure because of migration. Such programs should be also transparent in order to limit land loss and to achieve food security, sustainable food security to future generations. Thank you.
Thank you to Jordan. And now I give the floor to Kazakhstan, to be followed by Pakistan. Kazakhstan, you have the floor. Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Land degradation and drought pose a threat to social stability, food security, and the economic well-being of Kazakhstan and of the entire Central Asian region. About 60% of the population of Central Asia is directly dependent on agriculture. It's their main source of income, and so droughts present a serious threat. The consequences of such phenomena include loss of agricultural production and threats to security, quality of life, and an increase of economic and social tension. According to the study Interconnection of Land Degradation, Climate Change and Migration in Central Asia, a study conducted under the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, land degradation has become one of the factors driving forced migration. And the problem is most acute in arid regions, where a large part of the population is losing their livelihoods, losing their chance to work in agriculture, which is leading to increased urbanization and increasing the load on urban infrastructure. Fighting climate migration requires a comprehensive approach that includes measures to mitigate the effects of climate change and improve adaptation to new conditions and to support migrants. Kazakhstan has adopted a strategy for achieving carbon neutrality by 2060, and it has updated its nationally determined contribution. At the legislative level, climate adaptation provisions are being implemented within our environmental code. Priority areas include agriculture, water management, civil protection, and forestry. At the same time, we are working together with the UN Development Programme and with the Green Climate Fund to develop our national adaptation plan. This plan will include conducting vulnerability assessments and creating conditions for safe and sustainable migration, and also infrastructure projects to protect against climate risks such as floods and droughts and others. Now, of course, taking into account that climate migration is global, we need to work with international donors and partners to support countries, to develop programs, and to put in place the protection mechanisms for migrants due to climate change. In conclusion, let me stress how important it is to inform the population about the climate change and migration nexus, and to raise public awareness and to develop effective solutions. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Kazakhstan. And I now give the floor to Rwanda, to be followed by Brazil. Rwanda, you have the floor.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, on behalf of the government of Rwanda, I want to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the UNCCD for organizing this event. Land degradation and drought are powerful drivers of forced migration, exacerbating security risk and undermining global prosperity. As a nation that has faced this displacement but also achieved remarkable recovery, Rwanda intimately understands these challenges. Our experience shows that investing in land restoration can be transformative in previously degraded areas. We have seen communities transition from vulnerability to stability and resilience. Projects like the Green Gichumbi project serve as a testament to this success. By restoring landscapes and promoting sustainable practices, we have reduced migration pressures, strengthened local economies, and enhanced climate resilience. These achievements are rooted in a holistic approach, integrating community engagement, ecosystem restoration, and climate adaptation. The lesson is clear. Addressing land degradation is not just an environmental imperative. It is a pathway to reducing vulnerabilities and fostering prosperity. At the international level, it is essential to integrate migration considerations into land and climate policies. This includes creating sustainable livelihoods, supporting renewable energy transitions, and scaling up ecosystem restoration efforts. Such investments will open doors for vulnerable populations, reducing the need for migration and strengthening security and development. Rwanda stands committed to working with all nations to address land degradation and drought as global challenges. Together we can turn risks into opportunities for inclusive and sustainable growth. Shukran jazilan.
Muchas gracias, Rwanda.
Thank you very much, Rwanda. And now I give the floor to Pakistan, to be followed by South Sudan.
Hello, thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Very good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, distinguished delegates. I extend my sincere appreciation to UNSCCD Secretariat for organizing this vital dialogue on this issue of profound concern for the countries like Pakistan, which is at the forefront of the disaster-induced forced migration due to the droughts and other climate vulnerabilities. Pakistan has been designated by UNCCD among the top 23 countries facing a major drought emergency. During 1997 to 2003, Pakistan faced the worst drought in 50 years, mainly in the provinces of Balochistan and Sindh, impacting some 3 million people and 7.2 million heads of livestock. Excellencies, climate change is expected to push over 143 million people to migrate internally by 2050 in sub-Saharan Africa. South Asia and Latin American, which would be around 2.8% of the population of these regions, they will migrate due to water scarcity, rising sea level, and storm surges. In South Asia, approximately 5.25 million people were displaced in 2021 due to disaster. In 2022, Pakistan recorded highest number of migration persons, with 1.2 million people migrated due to devastating floods, which the climate modeling estimate that by 2050, Pakistan will have nearly 2 million climate migrants within its border. In South Asia, water availability is projected to increase over broad spans of the continent through the end of the century, but to decline in Afghanistan, northeastern Pakistan. Dear Excellencies and distinguished delegates, Pakistan is committed to advancing UNCCD objectives, but urges collective global action to ensure sustained future for the vulnerable and marginalized communities. Since independence, losses worth over $68 billion have been sustained by Pakistan's economy by virtue of hydrometeorological disaster, with $48 billion losses due to historic event 2010 and 2022 floods. Excellencies, Pakistan has adopted a multi-pronged approach to financing land restoration and drought resilience. Pakistan has developed National Adaptation Plan in 2023. National Adaptation Plan identifies estimated financial needs of the country to tune of $152 billion by 2030. Bridging the financing gap for land restoration and drought resilience demand global collaboration. Pakistan's call upon the international community to uphold the principles of the common but differentiated responsibilities and capabilities under the Rio Convention to ensure the developing nations receive equitable access to global climate finance with simplified access and greater flexibility for implementation of national drought plans to protect their people and ecosystem and continue to actively contribute to the global sustained development goals. Thank you very much for your attention. Excellencies and distinguished guests.
Gracias.
Thank you to Pakistan, and I would now give the floor to South Sudan, to be followed by Tajikistan. South Sudan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, Excellencies, and distinguished participants. On behalf of the government of the Republic of South Sudan, I would like to add my voice to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for hosting the COP16 and for the warm hospitality accorded to us since our arrival to this country. Reflecting on yesterday's discussion, I was struck by how our digital agriculture projects in South Sudan resonated with many of the points raised here. Drought and in turn land degradation has a deep impact on a country's long-term food security. Regional trends and meteorological data dating 1970 to 2000 indicate 15 to 20% decrease in rainfall and increased temperature by more than 0.4 degrees per decade over the past 30 years. Erratic rainfalls with short and delayed seasons, frequent occurrence of drought and expansion of deserts southwards, frequency of floods increased over the last 8 decades, and drought and flood degraded capacity of ecosystem. Excellency, the impact of desertification and of climate change in general on South Sudan. Most countries are affected by either floods or droughts. South Sudan has been experiencing both floods and droughts over the last couple of years. The impact of floods was this year. The impact of floods was so severe that 7 out of 10 of our states were affected, and that forced the government to declare a state of emergency. The frequent droughts, flooding, and forced displacement has rendered 7.5 million people food insecure. Droughts and increasing climate variability would decrease sorghum, which is the staple crop yield, by 5 to 25% between 2000 and 2030. Drought and flood devastate lives and livelihoods, destroy crops and livestock, causing massive displacement and food insecurity, exacerbating existing tensions over land use, particularly among farmers and pastoralists, as they compete for increasingly scarce resources, including grazing and arable land. However, my government has made strides to ensure that it proactively deals with the unfolding situation. The government has developed implementation of environmental policy. Government has developed comprehensive agriculture master plan and irrigation development master plan, national strategy for climate change, adaptation and mitigation, including flood preparedness response, which was launched this year in June. The government has further developed national food security strategy and disaster risk management. In this regard, South Sudan fully supports the African Drought Initiative on Drought to work together to elevate the initiative to protocol status under the UNCCD. South Sudan is working collaboratively with our development partners in the efforts to implement digital innovation projects to promote
Concluye su tiempo.
more sustainable climate resilient farming practices. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Muchas gracias, Sudán.
Thank you, South Sudan. And I now give the floor to Tajikistan, to be followed by Egypt. Mr. Chairperson, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, over these last years, the population of Tajikistan has faced the increasing burden of climate change, which is leading to increasing land degradation, environmental damage, and increased frequency of disasters. Now, today, we see that to address migration forced by climate, we need to consolidate the efforts of international organizations and partners. Today, we are hoping that these discussions and holding of roundtables will produce recommendations that will lead to more concrete steps, to real action. Ladies and gentlemen, Tajikistan has put together, developed legislation to address national disasters. We are working on managing these phenomena. We are doing this in line with our national laws on migration also, and with our government regulations on regulating climate-induced migration in the country. We have short-term and mid-term plans to support migrants in this area. We have a national migration strategy that runs through to 2030. This strategy pursues the goal of managing migration processes, protecting their rights, protecting their families, and effective use of their economic potential to develop our country. Every year, we have people who are displaced from dangerous regions, many households who need support, and we are providing this assistance. We are also helping them to adapt to the new situations they face. Colleagues, to ensure food security in the country, we must raise the sustainable management of our natural resources, sustainable agriculture, helping the local populations, and also awareness work with the population. We also need to develop enterprise, to develop private business, to help rural populations, above all women and youth, to restore traditional knowledge and traditional natural resource management methods, and also to introduce new technology into rural areas, to carry out monitoring, to further monitor all of the processes involved in this area. We believe that these measures will help us to improve the quality of life of our populations in the long term. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Tajikistán.
Thank you, Tajikistan. And I now give the floor to Egypt. And I will then hand the chairing to my colleague, Adrian Ford. Egypt, you have the floor.
Your Excellency President, dear delegates, Excellencies, allow me to express our gratitude to the government of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and its people for their warm hospitality, and we would like to congratulate them on the excellent organization of COP16, and we hope that we will be able to achieve results that will lead to facing land degradation and facing drought around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, the problem of desertification is one of the most important challenges that we are facing as the human family on this planet. This is a very complex challenge, especially in the light of the consequences of loss of biodiversity, climate change. International statistics show that 40% of agricultural lands in the world are degraded, and the world requires unprecedented efforts in order to restore more than 5 million hectares by 2030 in order to be able to achieve the LDN, land degradation neutrality. Egypt is facing many challenges in the field of water. We are one of the countries that face the most serious crisis of water scarcity. We face very low rainfall, 1 out of 10 billion cubic meters of rainfall. We rely on the Nile River for water resources. However, we have great needs in terms of water, especially to produce food. We have around 60 billion cubic meters of water needs. The gap is filled by recycling of a big quantity of our used water, and we import also water from through the food production. This is further exacerbated by the fact that we are hosting more than 10 billion, says the speaker, refugees from all around the world. And we have increasing needs because of demographic pressure. Despite the fact that we have programs to limit demographic increases, we have also needs in the field of development programs. We also have the problem of the connection between underground water and seawater, saline water, and this leads to the increasing levels of water salinity. That's why our government has given a big priority and importance to the issue of drought. We have invited the UNCCD Secretariat to seek to adopt a drought initiative in order to support the most vulnerable countries. Drought is threatening social security, social peace, and the dignified life of the citizens. Drought is also threatening the sustainability and the serenity of our natural resources in the most impacted areas. According to the New Delhi Declaration, the President is interrupting. Despite all these environmental and social challenges, our adaptation to drought is one of the points that are heavily present in all our sustainable development plans and Egypt Vision 2030. Our government has adopted a proactive and preventive approach by resorting to underground water and to also build water treatment plants so that water can be recycled, reused for agriculture. And we have also adopted a set of new and modern laws on pollution and natural resources. We also have many initiatives and programs to rationalize the use of irrigation and water for irrigation. The President is inviting the Speaker to round up. Thank you, says the Speaker.
Just let me thank Excellency Hugo Moran for your earlier intervention and the co-chairing of the meeting. I want now to invite Gabon to have the floor.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chairman, Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, today land degradation is affecting more than 3 billion people worldwide, in particular the most vulnerable. The consequences of land degradation are deep. Food, lack of food, increase of the price of commodities, worsening of climate change because of emanations from degraded land. Furthermore, social insecurity has triggered forced and mass migration of populations. Land degradation gives rise to a whole range of systemic challenges threatening both food security and the economy and social stability. To face this avalanche of systemic challenges, we must inevitably sustainably manage our lands. We must also strive to meet our SDGs, especially those linked to land degradation neutrality. This approach will enable us to meet these many challenges in terms of sustainable management of land, especially in consultation with sub-regional organizations like my country, Gabon. The countries of the Central African sub-region cooperate and share their experiences within the Central African Forestry Commission to find agreed solutions which are consistent with the SDGs in terms of land degradation neutrality. This cooperation is happening in the context of the sub-regional program of action designed to contribute to the stability of and the peace in the region by harmonizing and making more effective the national programs of action to combat land degradation and drought. On the basis of this aforementioned cooperation, Gabon has set itself the aim to achieve zero deforestation in order to achieve land degradation neutrality and restore all of our degraded lands on the one hand, and also to reduce by half between now and 2030 the fall in productivity of land, which is 9.71% in 2021 and 2015 furthermore. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you. Chad, you have the floor, followed by Madagascar.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Thank you for giving me the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, the impact of drought and land degradation are visible now all around the world and are a harsh reality for the African continent. In my country, Chad, a desert occupies more than 600,000 square kilometers. That's 48% of our total land surface. This is a geographic reality with all of the side effects that it brings in terms of alarming land degradation. And this is jeopardizing food security and livelihoods for millions of people in Chad. And this means that combating land degradation and drought must be a top priority. The most striking example and the most painful example is that of Lake Chad. This was once one of the biggest lakes in Africa. It had rich and diverse biodiversity. It was a source of pride for the entire sub-region, but it has lost more than 90% of its surface from 1960 through to today. This is an ecological disaster that has dramatic repercussions on our populations and for the economy, biodiversity and security throughout the Sahel and beyond. Indeed, the fact that this lake can now no longer provide all of its ecosystem functions has seriously exacerbated migration and has displaced populations into the interior of the country in search of fertile land and pasture zones. And this leaves the road open for Boko Haram terrorists to come in and to spread, bringing grief to thousands of families throughout the Sahel region. The advance of the desert, but also incipient desertification in zones that were previously humid and were suitable for agriculture and for livestock, are causing insecurity, and this is displacing populations. This is leading people to go in search of new lands, and this is a source of conflict between populations. So, faced with all of these challenges that require concerted and ambitious action, under the enlightened leadership of His Excellency Mohamed Idriss Déby Itno, President of the Republic of Chad, our country is now engaged in trying to reverse this land degradation trend, acting in line with the Bonn Challenge we plan to restore 5 million hectares of degraded land through reforestation. And also, in the same vein, we have an ambitious national voluntary target to restore more than 41,000 square kilometers of degraded land by 2040. This is a goal that represents 32.5% of our national territory, and this shows how determined our leadership is to take up this existential challenge for today's population and for the coming generations. Ladies and gentlemen, these are just some of our efforts. We also have the efforts of the National Great Green Wall Agency. And this isn't just about planting trees. This is about taking a holistic approach, which encompasses sustainable management of water resources, agroforestry, and sustainable land and forest management to support alternative livelihoods for local communities. At the same time, we are also developing land degradation neutrality comprehensive guide, mainstreaming this into our policies and strategies to ensure that LDN is taken into account, that is mainstreamed into all of our development areas, water management, agriculture, and urban development, and infrastructure development, working together with our partners. We are developing an integrated drought management plan to address these challenges and also to reduce inequality between men and women as concerns the effects. But we are also aware that we cannot address these challenges alone, and for this we need to reinforce regional and international cooperation to amplify the impact of efforts to prevent land degradation. Together, let me reiterate Chad's full commitment to combating land degradation and drought. This is not just about the environment. It is about development. It's imperative for the security and the dignity of our peoples. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. I just want to make the point that in the interest of time, because we have a time limit for this exercise, I would like Excellencies to keep their presentations to the 3 minutes allocated. I think that we are running a little bit behind time at this moment, so I am indulging you to keep your speeches to 3 minutes. Madagascar, you have the floor. Thanks.
Thank you, chairs. So in many countries, you can see internal migration or international migration as an opportunity that can create wealth, that can create opportunities. These are the migration of families that seek for a better future. In our country, we are facing internal migration, but which is caused by the survival instinct because of land degradation. Some regions of Madagascar are not livable anymore. And this year we released a study with the World Food Programme stating that 13 out of 24 regions in Madagascar are affected by desertification. In response to this issue, and under the leadership of His Excellency President of Madagascar, André Rajoelina, and Prime Minister Nsai Christian, with partnership with UNDP and IOM, Madagascar has developed a strategy on internal migration until 2026, focusing on the regions of Mena Bay and the 3 regions of the south. A key initiative involving many ministries, and this strategy has been turned into concrete actions. We can talk about the innovative land reserve approach. The creation of the basic land reserve of more than 6,000 hectares represents an innovative approach to providing alternative livelihoods and land for migrants. The objective is to alleviate pressure on the biodiversity-rich forest of Mena Bay and Min by offering sustainable land use alternatives. We have also concretized the Green Title Program. It's implemented as part of the Land Access Facilitation Program through the National Land Program Second, as well as the Land Redistribution Program under the Green Title Project of the Malagasy government. We have shifted some agricultural cultures and challenges. Migrants, particularly those who previously cultivated maize, are increasingly turning to peanut cultivation. Additionally, Madagascar is currently implementing the project promoting the climate resilience of populations affected by climate change in the Bas-Tiribin in collaboration with the IOM. This initiative focuses on land restoration and the establishment of new investment zones for migrant populations. The GIZ supports Madagascar in the north in providing support for the land restoration project, land tenure security, and land allocation for local population in the northern part of Madagascar in partnership with LL and DEV. All of that to say that we need to also first secure the home and the houses of these livelihoods and to prepare the new places where these families are migrating. We need a 360 approach, and the Malagasy government is simultaneously promoting sustainable land use, food security, and resilience among affected population. I thank you.
Thank you. India, you have the floor, followed by Nicaragua.
Excellencies, friends, ladies and gentlemen, migration is an old-age phenomenon triggered by the search for better opportunities. What we are discussing here is forced migration in search of livelihood. Land degradation and drought result in reduced soil productivity, resulting in loss of livelihood. The forced migration that results from it creates broken communities, strained social cohesion, gender inequality, malnutrition, and alienation which cannot be ignored. In his address at the UNCCD COP14 in 2019, India's Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji emphasized that, I quote, "Human empowerment is incomplete without a focus on land degradation. We are increasing the fertility of land through various initiatives and are committed to restoring 26 million hectares of degraded land by 2030, unquote. This vision continues to guide India's action for sustainable land management. Recognizing migration's disproportionate impact on vulnerable groups, India has making efforts to check migration by engaging youth in livelihood programs. India's experience highlights the critical role of nature-based solutions, regional collaboration, and prioritizing vulnerable communities in addressing forced migration and ensuring security. One of the key approaches to address land degradation and drought is the improvement of water conservation practices such as river rejuvenation and creation of water retention structures. In India, a special initiative to develop and rejuvenate water bodies. Microfinance facilities are being provided to individual farmers through regional rural banks and other financial institutions to support the agricultural activities in their traditional farm holdings. Similarly, soil health cards are provided to farmers to understand change in soil health affected the land management and take corrective measures. These interventions are expected to discourage migration. Promotion of new technologies for addressing land degradation, such as use of space technology, geographic information system, and drones for land monitoring and precision agriculture, artificial intelligence for soil and water management, soil bioengineering with microbial soil inculcants, etc., can further strengthen effort to combat land degradation and reduce the consequent migration. These technologies, along with financial support, need to be shared with developing countries, especially those with acute land degradation issues. India believes with the collective and focused efforts, we can achieve the sustainable development goals related to life and land and peace and justice, which will build a future where prosperity thrives on the foundation of sustainability. I thank you all.
Thank you, India. Brazil, you are next, followed by Italy.
Ladies and gentlemen, drought and land degradation represent interconnected global challenges with profound implications for the stability, security, and livelihoods of our peoples and communities. In Brazil's semi-arid region, where family farming predominates, productivity losses exacerbate poverty, intensify land conflicts, and drive migration to overcrowded urban centers. In response, Brazil is revising and strengthening its Brazilian Action Plan to combat desertification and mitigate the effects of drought, which will guide actions for the next 20 years. This plan, developed with the participation of over 1,200 representatives from government, civil society, science, and the private sector, reflects our commitment to participatory and effective solutions. Brazil has a long tradition of sustainable land management and adapting to drought. While new challenges emerge, such as the appearance of arid areas in regions previously unaffected, past public policies have proven effective. Expanded access to water, infrastructure, and technical assistance have reduced migration rates. The semi-arid region, which is the most threatened by desertification, land degradation, and drought, now accounts for 37% of Brazil's family farming, making it the territory with the highest proportion of family farmers in the country. We need evidence-based public policies that have demonstrated success, such as the 1,200,000 cisterns program, food acquisition initiatives, and subsidies that guarantee minimum prices for socio-biodiversity products. These programs strengthen local economies and foster community resilience. To address these challenges, we must integrate ecosystem restoration and nature-based solutions with climate adaptation policies, sustainable value chains, soil preservation, ensuring water available in both quantity and quality. In addition, Brazil is structuring its new national adaptation strategy with sectoral plans focused on food security, traditional peoples and communities, and family farming. Although we have made progress, challenges such as access to land and the need to expand infrastructure remain. For this, we reaffirm our commitment to the public policies such as the plans for the prevention and control of deforestation and forest fires, aligning environmental conservation with sustainable development. This ministerial dialogue is a critical opportunity to align global efforts, promoting a just transition that fosters a more resilient, equitable, and sustainable economic model. Brazil stands ready to strengthen and lead this agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brazil. Italy, you are next, followed by European Union.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege to address this assembly and share Italy's perspective and the urgent challenges posed by desertification, land degradation, and their far-reaching consequences, including forced migration and regional instability. These are not isolated environmental issues, but complex phenomena that demand coordinated and sustainable solutions. Italy recognized the fundamental role that sustainable land management plays in promoting resilience, social cohesion, and economic stability. Our commitment to this cause is reflected in decades of international cooperation and initiatives aimed at addressing these challenges, particularly in regions most vulnerable to the effect of desertification. Africa, a continent deeply affected by land degradation, has long been a focal point of Italy's engagement. Historical projects, such as the integrated Keita project in Niger, exemplify how targeted intervention can transform arid landscapes into productive ecosystems. This initiative reclaimed thousands of hectares and established a foundation for community-driven land management that continues to inspire similar efforts. Building on this legacy, Italy supports initiatives that address the root causes of environmental degradation and its socio-economic impacts. The AMAWAS program in Africa focused on early warning system for drought and disaster resilience, highlights our commitment to empowering communities with tools to adapt and mitigate environmental crises. Italy's contributions align closely with the objectives of the United Nations Convention to combat desertification. We understand that land restoration goes hand in hand with the conflict prevention, particularly in regions where resource scarcity exacerbates tensions. Under this aspect, water management is another cornerstone of our approach. Ladies and gentlemen, central to our efforts is the principle of partnership. Desertification and migration are challenges that no country can tackle alone. Italy, through the Rome process, has worked to bring nations, organizations and communities together to share responsibility and act collectively. This dialogue has laid the groundwork for practical solutions that foster regional stability and global solidarity. As we come together in this forum, let us reaffirm our collective commitment to addressing these pressing challenges by restoring lands, strengthening livelihoods and promoting stability. We can create a future where migration is a choice, not a necessity. Italy stands ready to work with all partners in this endeavor, fostering collaboration and innovation to turn the tide of desertification into a path toward resilience and opportunity for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Italy. European Union, you are next, followed by Nicaragua.
Excellencies, dear co-moderators, dear colleagues, let me thank you first, the Presidency and the UNCCD Secretariat for organizing this dialogue. Our livelihoods all around the world depend on natural resources. Instability, social tensions, conflicts, and forced displacement can all rise if these become scarcer. Fighting the interlinked crisis of climate change and environmental degradation is one of the most important tools of conflict prevention we have. We need to start thinking about investing in preserving natural resources as an investment in peace. Land in particular is a natural resource with special value to humanity. The EU's nature policies are crucial elements for the EU to act against desertification, land degradation and drought. Not only that, in our experience, nature restoration is an investment that pays off. For every euro invested, we will get at least 8 euros in return. Land degradation is a pervasive, systematic phenomenon that affects all parts of the world and can take many problematic forms, including soil erosion, deforestation, desertification, and pollution. The rise of land grabbing in rural areas, coupled with insecure land tenure for local communities, contribute to unsustainable land use and to the forced displacement of the most vulnerable. The complex impacts of environmental degradation and climate change on displacement and migration patterns deserve our highest attention. In many cases, climate change and environmental degradation exacerbate the already existing vulnerabilities of many communities. Therefore, enabling safe legal pathways, which are key for regular and orderly migration, can be one of the best chances of coping with the worst impacts for some people, to promote livelihood, diversification, and to reduce pressure on ecosystems. Voluntary legal migration can act as a potentially positive response to the impacts of land degradation and climate change. Sustainable land management and drought resilience are essential building blocks to ensure global stability, security, sustainability, and prosperity. The EU welcomes that important initiatives such as the Sustainability, Stability and Security Initiative in Africa will be part of the discussion of this conference. The EU also welcomes the collaboration established between the UNCCD Secretariat and the International Organization on Migration. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicaragua, you have the floor, followed by Ukraine.
بسم الله. السيد الرئيس. السلام عليكم.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor of passing on the greetings of our President, Daniel Ortega Saavedra, to all countries here, and in particular to the government and the people of Saudi Arabia for their hospitality in hosting this COP16. Nicaragua is raising its voice before the great powers of this world, the powers that are ignoring their historical responsibilities, and we demand greater technological and financial efforts to create fair conditions, allowing the developing countries to address the global environmental challenges. This COP16 is the moment to reiterate that we need a respectful dialogue, a fair dialogue between all, knowing that the developing countries are working for their independence, while the developed countries are ignoring their climate responsibilities. And they are those primarily responsible for the situation, in particular the Western countries, the great capitalist economies of the West, which are pursuing a destructive production and consumption model and are causing this climate crisis. The developing countries are working to reinforce action against climate change and desertification, to working for the Sustainable Development Goals and for addressing the multiple economic, environmental and social crises. Our natural resources are a heritage that we must protect. To do this, our President, Daniel Ortega, and our Vice President, Rosario Murillo, have engaged in policies that work to bring together economic development and protecting the environment. We call on the countries of the Global North, which have shown a lack of commitment, to support the international efforts against desertification. Our Vice President is saying that what we are calling climate change and desertification and drought is not this. It is destroyed land. It's the plundering of Mother Earth. And so we need to take a new approach, a civilization-based approach to protect Mother Earth, to protect nature. We are the representatives here who could do this. We have to put nature at the center of our priority, following the principle of common but differentiated responsibility. This is crucial if we are to succeed. Mr. President, we are facing pollution. We are facing biodiversity loss. And to conclude, ladies and gentlemen, we express our full and complete support to the Palestinian people, to the Palestinian cause, which is always at the heart of all international fora today. And for the sake of our conscience, we insist for justice on the Palestinian cause and for the Palestinian people to have their inalienable right to have their state within their internationally recognized borders. Thank you.
Excellencies, I must continue to reiterate the importance of keeping your speeches to 3 minutes. We are very, very limited as it relates to our time. Please, Ukraine, you have the floor, followed by France.
Good afternoon, Excellencies and distinguished delegates. On behalf of the government of Ukraine, I extend my sincere gratitude to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for hosting the 16th session of the Conference of the Parties to the UN Convention for Combating Desertification. As a party to the convention, Ukraine fully supports global efforts aimed at improving land productivity, restoring ecosystems, and promoting sustainable land and water resource management in line with the international law. In this context, I must highlight the extraordinary challenges Ukraine faces due to the ongoing, unprovoked, and unjustified aggression of Russia. The war has caused unprecedented destruction to ecosystems, including contamination of land and water resources, and created significant risks of desertification in affected areas. Just one example, the deliberate destruction by Russian forces of Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant in the central part of Ukraine resulted in catastrophic environmental damage, including the loss of wetlands of international importance and overall Ukraine's agricultural capacity. Ukraine urges all nations committed to upholding international law and environmental protection to support the implementation of President of Ukraine peace formula, particularly its focus on ecological security. Furthermore, we call on the parties to the Convention to adopt measures to halt Russia's environmentally destructive actions which undermine the Convention's shared goals of protecting and restoring land resources. I kindly request that this statement be included in the final conference document. Thank you.
Thank you, Ukraine. France, followed by Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. France, you have the...
Yes, thank you very much. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, friends, with now more than 25 million climate displacements in the world in 2023, partly linked to drought and to land degradation, it is today urgent to address the root causes of induced displacement, forced displacement. This is one of the crucial issues involved in economic and social development and prosperity. And France, in this respect, believes that community resilience cannot be ensured if we do not take an approach that recognizes the development, security, and peace nexus. These synergies must be at the core of the regional partnerships, the multilateral partnerships, and this must be built around committed action at the local level by the competent authorities. And in this context, France welcomes the engagement of the Secretariat and the states parties to operationalize the Sustainability, Stability and Security Initiative, the 3S initiative, working with the IFAD. France also welcomes the development of the guide on the rural-urban nexus prepared and the partnership prepared by the Secretariat with UN Habitat, and we encourage the dissemination of this work to raise awareness about soil health impacts. It's this kind of interagency cooperation that allows us to take a holistic and effective approach. And in this regard, France, in its interministerial strategy on migration and development through to 2030, has set a goal of acting to address the structural causes of forced migration. And this means that we need to coordinate responses and long-term actions, taking into account the migration dimension in our different policies, our different development policies, everything to do with climate and the environment. And so our development agency, in the context of the crises we face, we are working to respond to the immediate needs of people, of migrants, to avoid saturation of the basic services, to work to address the root causes of conflicts and natural resource-induced conflict. We are putting in place a rapid response capacity and more structured projects to rebuild trust between the different social groups. And it's in this way that we are working through the different projects in Cameroon, for example, to better integrate these refugees from Central Africa into the local communities, and also funds transfers through the diasporas. and supporting productive investment to allow people to become actors in development in their own regions, in their own homes, to respond to climate change. Also responding to drought, where there are often tremendous economic losses involved. This requires rapid and effective solidarity mechanisms. Diaspora finance could be optimized in this respect to address these crises. And I have no doubt that through these kinds of exchanges, we can share concrete solutions to better understand and to better manage forced displacements that are induced by desertification and drought. Thank you.
Thank you, France. The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, followed by Sudan.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairperson. Good afternoon, all ministers, distinguished delegates. The impact of land degradation and drought, which is inducing migration in our country, has led us to work to achieve our land degradation neutrality goals and to protect our people from the impact of environmental crises and to protect our resources. This and to end the plundering consumption model, which has to work towards a more environmentally aware model. To achieve a social prosperity, we need to respect nature, and to do this, we have put in place a presidential committee to manage natural resources and water resources. We are also ensuring local active community participation and reforestation efforts and implementing common projects for sustainable use, for biodiversity in our river basins, for integrated management of the different inputs and resources to ensure sustainable development, comprehensive management to protect the Amazon areas too, indigenous local knowledge, ancestral knowledge, tenure rights, rural and urban issues, gender dimension. All of this is integrated in our efforts to protect our resources and to act against drought. And also the impact of the El Niño phenomenon. We have regulations in place to protect property, to prevent property concentration, to ensure a more fair distribution of property, and to protect our farmers. We are also promoting women's land tenure, increasing the number of women who have land tenure rights. We need to continue this work with the primary goal of meeting the needs of the most vulnerable population sectors and ensure they have access to basic services such as health and housing and education. And here we have in place new tools to protect our people. We are acting to protect the victims and also those who have been displaced. We have put in place a series of policy decisions to work for people's welfare, to bolster our agro-food systems through inclusive participation and decision-making processes, including, for example, school meals. This is part of our education efforts. This will ensure that our people have access to school meals, and this has been a successful experience in our country for more than 20 years now. To conclude, I would also like to make a particular call here at this platform, calling on the developed countries which have benefited from the use of resources to fulfill their commitments and to ensure access to financing for the developing countries so that we can address the challenges of desertification, land degradation and drought for food production and to protect life on our planet. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, and I am sorry for having gone over time.
Thanks. Sudan and then Bahamas.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. مشاركة السودان في كيف يمكن للإدارة المستدامة للأراضي والقدرة على الصمود في مواجهة.
And we also believe that land management and resilience and acting against drought is crucial to, if we want to tackle the root causes of forced migration. Conflicts are having a negative impact on land, on natural resources, on our soils and our agriculture, and poor land management also during conflict situations. This is all having an impact too, and this is leading to violations of laws regarding land use and management. We all know that it is difficult to protect natural resources in a conflict situation. Land degradation is an urgent issue. Supporting land productivity, supporting soil health and our forests and our grazing lands. This is all crucial, and this is all being impacted. The situation this has all had an impact on our national situation. We have also seen the impacts of extraction industries, gold mining. This has also led to conflicts. It has exacerbated land degradation. It is a factor in the conflicts we see. And it is having a negative impact on the forests. And there is also illegal exploitation of resources. We have 10 million people who have been displaced. Now, if we want to address land degradation, we need to realize that this kind of degradation is a national security threat. When we have a conflict situation, we see decreasing vegetation cover. We've also got the use of landmines, chemical substances. This is adding to the crisis. Even when a conflict ends, there are still problems to be addressed. The plant cover, the situation of the animals, the livestock. And so there must be support for countries like ours, support for Sudan and its reconstruction efforts. Land degradation is endangering livelihoods. When refugees seek ways to support their needs, and they end up having recourse to unsustainable agricultural practices. And so if we don't take immediate action to remedy this situation, we are going to reach a point of no return unless we find a way to meet the needs of our people. And to do this, we need to have participation. We need to end the kind of land degradation we are seeing and provide displaced people with the means they need, alternative livelihoods. The affected countries must also receive the needed assistance to be able to sustainably manage the environment and address the needs of all of their people. Thank you.
Bahamas, followed by Turkey.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Mr. President, Secretariat, and Excellencies, allow me to express gratitude to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and its government for the hospitality and hosting of this very important COP. The Bahamas supports all efforts against land degradation and joins with all other nations as we strive to a greater future for our land and people. Chair and Excellencies, the critical issues of land degradation affect not only our environment, but also our communities and future generations. Sustainable land management and drought resilience are not just theoretical concepts. As we all know, they are practical solutions to the interconnected challenges of land degradation and forced migration, particularly in regions like the Bahamas. As the Bahamas is an archipelago, the effects of land degradation present an even greater challenge as we seek to implement SLM practices across our 18 inhabited islands. Sustainable land management is a holistic approach that integrates land, water, biodiversity, and environmental management to meet rising demands while ensuring the long-term sustainability of ecosystems and livelihoods. In the Bahamas, where the economy heavily relies on tourism and the environment, which facilitates the major industry, thus making SLM crucial, the degradation of land due to unsustainable practices, climate change, and natural disasters, particularly hurricanes, pose a significant threat to food security, economic stability, and the overall well-being of the population. In the Bahamas, droughts can have devastating effects on agriculture, water supply, and the natural environment, especially more frequently and intense forest fires on our Pine Islands, impacting human life and health. Building drought resilience involves implementing water-saving technologies, improving soil health, and adopting drought-resistant crops, and looking into saline farming due to the limited supply of fresh water. These measures not only help in maintaining agricultural productivity, but also in preserving the natural ecosystems that are vital for the island's biodiversity. Land degradation in the Bahamas leads to reduced agricultural yields, loss of biodiversity, and increased vulnerability to natural disasters. This degradation often forces communities to migrate in search of better living conditions, disrupting social structures and placing additional strains on urban areas. Our country has started exploring some SLM techniques such as the Integrated Land Management Project, which focuses on techniques such as agroforestry, silvopasture, conservation tillage, and integrated pest management, which can significantly improve land productivity and resilience. Collaborative efforts with environmental groups and creating policies to support the environment are also things that we are undertaking. We understand that there is more that can be done, and by adapting and implementing some more sustainable land management practices, we can restore degraded lands, improve soil fertility, and enhance water retention. And these practices not only mitigate the effects of drought, but also create sustainable livelihoods, reducing the need for forced migration. In conclusion, sustainable land management and drought resilience are not just environmental issues. They are essential for the socio-economic stability and the prosperity of the Bahamas and our fellow small island developing states. By adopting these practices, we can combat land degradation, enhance food security, and reduce forced migration. Let us work together to implement these solutions, ensuring a resilient and sustainable future for all. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you, Bahamas. Turkey next, and then Niger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear President, dear delegates, the main agenda item of our meeting is one of the most tragic issues in human history: migration. Wars, conflicts, pandemics, and disasters, among many other factors, lead to migration movements. In addition to this, land degradation and drought are also putting pressure on natural resources and causing severe damage. This situation displaces people from their living areas and forces them to migrate. People settle in areas they perceive as safe in order to access better living conditions. This brings about a number of serious issues, such as the disruption of stability and security concerns, both for the countries receiving migrants and for the migrants themselves. To overcome this challenge, it's crucial to implement sustainable land management and drought resilience principles that improve ecosystems, enhance people's well-being, and contribute to regional stability, peace, and security. Turkey has become a focal point to its stable, reassuring policies and its strategic and geopolitical position. Additionally, Turkey has gained the significant experience as a country that successfully manages both internal and external migration movements. To these characteristics, Turkey fulfills its historical responsibilities in establishing regional and global peace and justice in the international community. Turkey consistently offers these contributions through international collaborations. In this context, with the Ankara initiative we supported local development. The most concrete outcome of this has been the 3S Sustainability, Stability, Security Initiative, which aims to reverse migration by creating employment for the youth, women and migrants through the restoration of degraded lands in Africa. Turkey has also implemented many exemplary initiatives in local development at the national level. The establishment of development agencies to reduce regional development disparities, the preparation and implementation of regional development plans that cover all sectors, and the strengthening of the economic incentive and support system with the encouraging financial mechanisms are among our successful practice in this regard. Of course, we support these efforts with sustainable land management practice and rural development projects that promote local economic and social development, aimed at minimizing the effects of drought, land degradation and climate change. One of these initiatives is the related with village project, which we are implementing as the Ministry of Environment, Urbanization and Climate Change. Through this project, we have largely completed the infrastructure works in our villages. With this support, we are creating the necessary conditions for the sustainability of our rural development projects. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Niger, followed by St. Lucia.
Mesdames et Messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates, I would like, on behalf of the Hydroelectricity and Agriculture Minister of Niger, congratulate you and thank Saudi Arabia for the excellent organization of the 16th session of the COP of the UNCCD. As you know, Niger is facing very diverse and complex changing needs. It's facing environmental upheavals that are exacerbated by climate change and land degradation. We have 87% of our population that's dependent on agriculture and livestock raising for their livelihoods. Our national economy and our communities are therefore very vulnerable to climate and environmental change and to natural resource pressures. Human mobility is linked to it's a historic phenomenon linked to changes in Western Africa, and it's also being mainstreamed into our adaptation strategy. For example, in October, we recorded 34,628 migrants in outgoing, 45% were outgoing and 33% were incoming and 22% internal. And this shows the links between climate change, security threats and population increase. All of this is all of this is leading to people, it's reshaping habitats and livelihoods and access to resources. So today we don't just have one adaptation strategy faced to the climate and environmental and socio-economic risk that we face today. People are moving towards the coastal zones and mining zones. They are looking for new economic alternatives. This is pushing them into migration. Climate change and especially combating desertification. These are issues of paramount importance for Niger, and they require holistic approaches. These are issues not just for Niger. We believe in our country that if we want to regulate migration, we need to create activities that are focused on preserving our resources, nature-based solutions, and supporting young people and women. After all, these are the most vulnerable groups. We have to help them to develop viable economic projects, sustainable projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is St. Lucia, followed by Iraq.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, As a Caribbean people, we have borne the brunt of many natural disasters, man-made shocks and crises. However, we are resilient. Our people depend on the land for survival. We have long had an intimate relationship with our land. It is the source of our integrity, our strength, and our longevity. The issue of drought is becoming a more impactful phenomenon on small island developing states. And although surrounded by water, the amount of fresh water available for agriculture and domestic use is rapidly diminishing. The Caribbean islands are some of the most drought-prone and water-stressed areas. The current drought situation exacerbates existing vulnerabilities within the agriculture sector. Farmers are struggling with insufficient water resources to irrigate their crops, leading to decreased productivity. This not only affects food availability, but also increases reliance on imported goods, which can further strain the economy. Our food security is at stake. When droughts hit our communities, people are forced to find alternative livelihoods. In the Caribbean, our peoples enjoy the free movement among the islands. However, this brings with it its own multitude of challenges to the receiving countries, with strains on the medical sector, housing sector, and infrastructure sector, and other sectors as well. With small-scale economies and fragile environments, the movement of people due to stresses like drought and other natural disasters can be disastrous. Our islands can only support so much. I urge the global community to work together in recognizing the challenges that small island developing states are faced with, and for making the requisite resources available to overcoming this increasing prevalence, impact, and deleterious effects of drought on its people. Addressing the challenges of drought and land degradation requires a multifaceted approach involving innovative practices, community involvement, supportive policies, and international cooperation. By prioritizing those strategies today, we can ensure a more resilient future for the Caribbean and the wider seas community in general, one where our natural resources will be preserved for generations to come. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Thank you, St. Lucia. We will now have Iraq, followed by Guatemala.
شكرا سيادة الرئيس.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We in Iraq hope to become a green and sustainable Iraq as in the past, and to find a solution to degradation, sandstorms, dust storms, and migration. We want to create sustainable societies and to contribute in international and regional efforts to promote measures according to the UNCCD and according to the strategic framework 2018-2030. We want to harmonize our national policies with the needs of the local population and to improve our ecosystem so that we can be resilient to major environmental challenges. We have adopted major initiatives, including acting on many axes in order to develop our regional and international management of water resources, and to have also cross-boundary areas that are managed in a sustainable manner. We want to improve the productivity of our land, and we are working on adaptation with climate change. We have declared the creation of new natural resource reserves and adopted modern agricultural measures. We want to have a healthy soil. We want to support biodiversity, and we want also to support all our population, as it has been the case for our past years and throughout our history. Thank you.
Thank you, Iraq. Guatemala, followed by the Russian Federation. Guatemala? The mic is on now.
Excelentísimo.
President of COP16 Presidency's delegates, it's an honor for me to speak on behalf of Guatemala. I'd like to express our thanks to the government and the people of Saudi Arabia for their hospitality and for having agreed to host COP16 of the UN Convention to combat desertification. I'd like to thank the Secretariat for efforts made also. For us, we should underscore the global commitment to tackle the challenges linked to desertification, land degradation, and drought. Guatemala is one of the 20 mega diverse countries in the world, and people agree we are pluricultural, multi-ethnic, and multilingual. We have a Maya worldview with a particular link with nature. The Mayans, play a key role in preserving nature and biodiversity and ecosystems and water resources. We have to meet major challenges because of our climate vulnerability, and there is migration. The Central America corridor sees millions of people at risk of being displaced because of environmental degradation and drought, which affects vulnerable populations, and Guatemala is no exception. Desertification affects more than 32% of agricultural land in the country, especially in the Altiplano regions and the dry corridor regions. This year, 15 main foods from the basket increased 17% more than last year. In addition, another important factor linked to migration is precisely that. In 2024, 178,000 hectares of forests burnt, an increase of 560% as compared to the increases in the last 10 years. Despite all of this, we are committed to act by creating a national strategy to recover our forests, whereby for 2027 our aim is to have a zero balance in a loss of forests in our country. To conclude, migration in Guatemala cannot be understood unless you analyze the structural causes triggering it, such as land degradation, etc., affecting especially women and girls, which is why we appeal to the rest of the world. We must scale up efforts in public policies to promote sustainable management of land. We need to transform this crisis in an opportunity to guarantee decent living standards and means of livelihood, which is crucial for the stability of our country and of our region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Guatemala. Russian Federation.
Mr. Chairperson, colleagues, the Russian Federation has taken the floor to exercise its right of response following the statement made by Ukraine. We reject firmly the accusations against our country, which are not connected to the subject that we are dealing with today, namely the Convention on Combating Desertification. This convention has shown itself to be an authoritative, depoliticized platform for a constructive exchange of views on the most serious issues regarding desertification and land degradation. And it is precisely in this way that we see this multilateral mechanism, and we hope that all participants will be committed to the principles and goals of this convention. And I would like to note separately that Russia's actions are we were compelled to do this to respond to the terror that Kiev was pursuing against its citizens since 2014, more than 8 years. Russia is legitimately acting to protect its citizens, exercising its right of self-defense in line with Article 51 of the UN Charter, as was enshrined by the security. And regarding the Kakhovka Dam, let me note that Kiev did not even hide its sabotage and terrorist activity. As was noted by the Ukrainian General Kovalchuk in an interview with the Washington Post in 2022 in December, the Ukrainian forces deliberately struck the dam using a HIMARS missile, they hit one of the locks of the dam to make a hole to see how high the water level in the Dnieper River would come, and this says everything. And so we would call on stopping to use such a platform to make accusations. We call for depoliticized mutual action within the convention. Thank you.
Thank you, Russia. South Africa.
Thank you very much, co-chairs. We are well aware that the UNCCD reporting data dashboard of 2022 highlighted that about 1.2 billion people globally that are exposed to land degradation, while approximately 1.84 billion people are exposed to drought. Excellencies, land degradation, desertification, and drought are exacerbated by factors such as, amongst others, conflict, poverty, unpredictable weather patterns, and weak democratic governance. These factors somehow contribute to migration, which ultimately affects vulnerable communities. South Africa, like any other country, faces increasing threats to food production due to the impacts of climate change linked to meteorological hazards such as floods and droughts, and loss of productive land due to land degradation processes such as soil erosion, desertification, and drought. In this regard, there is also internal migration of people in search for better economic opportunities, and as land becomes unproductive to sustain livelihoods. In 2023, the Cabinet of South Africa adopted a national assessment report on the linkages between migration and land degradation. The report attests to the fact that there is internal and external migration in the country due to DLDD, climate change, and other environmental factors. This assessment further recommended that addressing the challenge of migration linked to land degradation requires scaling up of efforts for mobilization of resources for land restoration, strengthening synergies among the Rio Conventions and other multilateral environmental agreements, accelerating awareness raising on land degradation and drought, improving capacity of traditional leaders, implementation of land restoration, rehabilitation, climate mitigation and adaptation projects and programs. Distinguished delegates, it is important to note that land is a fundamental asset for most of the vulnerable population in developing countries. It is our view and our wish that this COP should reach a consensus to accelerate the mobilization of substantial resources for the implementation of large-scale restoration and drought-resilient projects and programs that will restore degraded landscape and promote sustainable land management. We therefore should aim to foster an environment where effective policies, best practices, and lesson learned will be shared among partners and stakeholders in order to address these challenges that face us. Distinguished delegates, as part of South Africa's G20 presidency in 2025, His Excellency President Ramaphosa announced today that one of the key priorities is strengthening disaster resilience in order to escalate discussions on climate-induced disasters and advocating for enhanced global support for post-disaster construction, particularly for vulnerable nations. This will, amongst others, contribute to elevating issues of forced migration, security, and prosperity, especially on the global stage. In conclusion, we look forward to contributing meaningfully in discussions throughout this COP. I thank you.
Thank you. We will now have finally the representative of civil society.
La déclaration des organisations.
The statement by civil society organizations will be made by Fatima Takawa. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of civil society organizations accredited here, involved in COP16, we welcome this opportunity given to us to tackle the crucial issue of forest migrations triggered by land degradation and drought. These challenges affect disproportionately the vulnerable, thus destabilizing ecosystems, the economies and communities. We call upon all stakeholders and states parties to commit themselves on these various points. Following points. Number one, increase national plans to combat drought and to promote sustainable use of land, and integrated management strategies which are inclusive and based on proven data. The policies you adopt should give priority to agroecological approaches to sustainable agricultural systems, safeguarding water sources, and embodying indigenous and local knowledge, including modern ways of managing drought. That was number one. Number two, set up governance frameworks that address the needs of the vulnerable in all affected areas. In particular, women, the young, indigenous peoples, and local communities, by ensuring that involving all of these in decision-making processes. Number three, ensure that the financial resources that are appropriate and accessible and go directly to local leaders to strengthen their resilience. We enjoin you to encourage, to attract investment in drought resilience rather than financing hosting of migrants. Number four, looking at the transboundary impacts of droughts through coordinated strategies regionally, nationally, and locally with local authorities. These strategies must take into account the gender issues, the youth issues, integrate management of land and ecosystems and water, whilst also guaranteeing data-based planning to tackle security risks. Number five, share national regional actions that are successful, such as reforestation and water management that are community-led, in order to give priority to evolutionary solutions. Finally, respect your commitments in the context of the UNCCD and to strengthen cooperation with the Rio Conventions, the three, CBD, UNFCCC, and UNCCD, to strengthen resilience and mitigate migration. To conclude, migration triggered by drought and land degradation is a matter pertaining to human rights which calls for urgent, innovative, and inclusive action. We enjoin parties to give priority to equality, equity, inclusiveness, security, and sustainability as main fundamental principles of their commitments. Together, we can transform to create a fairer and more prosperous future for all. Thank you.
I want to thank you all for participating in this session, and I would like to now hand over the floor to the President. Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the two co-chairs for the wise way in which they've steered the discussions this afternoon. May I also thank all those who have taken the floor this afternoon to participate in the exchanges of views of this meeting. We will now adjourn briefly, just enough time to rearrange the podium and move to the closure of the high-level meeting. I will ask you kindly to stay seated, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.